You know, Jean-Michel.
Okay. Let me maybe go back to a set of numbers and then address the issue of fragility. Okay. Mm-hmm. I would like to add on what Lionel has said by starting with a book that has been written by an American economist called Stephen Radelet, and the title of the book is Emerging Africa. And the book focuses on the 17 countries on the continent that have enjoyed an annual per capita growth of more than 4 points in the past 15 years. So you have 17 countries that group about 200 million people now that have been enjoying that very fast growth. By the way, you don't have South Africa in it. You don't have the major powers of the continent in it. And yet you have more than 200 million people there. And and within that, you have stories that have gone absolutely unnoticed. And I would refer to what Lionel has said about the misperceptions in OECD countries in general about Africa, such as Mozambique, 8% growth in the past 25 years per year. Okay. So incredible growth stories that have completely reshaped the landscape, the physical aspect of many African countries. Now, this growth pattern will continue. I'm going to say why, despite political instability and major environmental shocks that may continue to prevail on the continent for probably decades. And this growth pattern is going to change the world. Let's project ourselves in about 30 years ahead of us. Africa will be at that time about the double of the size of China today in demographic terms. There will be about, by the current growth rates, about 500 million people in sub-Saharan Africa only that will enjoy standard of livings, middle-class standard of living by today's standards. Now, at the same time, there will be about 1 billion people that will live below $2 a day of revenue. And if you talk in carbon terms, Africa will issue about twice as many tons of carbons in the world than today's China. I think this type of number is highlighting the kind of, at the same time, contribution Africa is going to bring to the world, but also the type of problems that Africa is going to bring to the world. Well, and let me finish very quickly. And this pattern is going to be, this pattern of growth and this type of challenge is going to be very difficult to change because Africa will have to go through an enhanced period of political instability because, especially because internal migrations that are associated with rapid demographic growth and rapid urbanization process are going to hit governments, are going to hit community life, are going to hit democracy and create a lot of instability. Second, the fight for land that is going to take place all over the continent, the fight for natural resources, the fight for less inequality and the reshaping of communities is going to have probably very important impacts on the environmental side. Now, despite those factors, it is my bet that the magnitude of the demographic move, this unprecedented in human history, the unprecedented speed in human history, at which the market is being created because of the demographic push, this unprecedented speed at which you see a transformation between the ratio, in the ratio between active and inactive people is going to push at the same time growth at a speed and at a depth that will overcome all those problems. So at the same time, we'll see a continent plagued with political problems, with environmental issues, and enjoying growth.
So we've got chaos and growth at the same time. Is that what you're describing?
It would be my core scenario. You may have other ones, okay? You may have more optimistic ones, you may have more skeptical ones, but it would be my core scenario.
Well, what I'm curious about is when we're talking about these numbers and these growth rates, if we had been talking a year ago, we would have folded Egypt into there and Tunisia into there, and they were great students of the IMF, and they're very good about getting their deficits down, getting their debts down. The middle class was growing, all the things that you're describing. But it's one of the truisms of politics that revolutions are not made by the poor, they're made by the aspiring classes. So what you're describing is a situation where the aspiring classes are going to be growing all over Africa. And the question is, moving from economics to politics, can Africa adapt to that, to the needs and the desires of those people? And you seem to be suggesting that probably it will eventually, but it's going to be a long and difficult road.
There will be again many revolutions and many political troubles. There's no way this can be differently. And by the way, it has impacts on the way economic stakeholders address African strategies. Okay, but it also has very important consequences about the way political stakeholders have to deal with Africa. Africa's rise is at the same time a blessing for the world and a challenge. And the major mistake that could be made about this continent, saying, wow, things are improving, let it be, and it will go for the better. No, there will have to be a lot of public policy involvement about Africa on security issues, on criminality issues, on environmental issues, on growth rebalancing. Let me highlight that for the world, again, the economic policies that Africa is going to choose, and whether it's export-oriented, inward-oriented, etc., are going to have huge consequences on our own economic stability and the own rebalancing of our economies. Now, middle classes will push for major changes in politics, in governance. The magnitude of inequalities in the continent and the very large number of very poor people that will remain. Africa will be a continent of misery also for decades because of its economic, of its demographic growth. So those factors will push into a lot of political troubles. And now they will not take place at the same time in all countries. And so this, and at the same very moment, you will have 1/3 of the continent faring very well, 1/3 of the continent being, in the dark hole, and 1/3 of the continent muddling through. And this will change. None of the successful countries right now may be in the league of the successful countries 10 years ahead. Others that are now considered as failed states may be very well in the leading game. So all this is going to be very flexible, very fuzzy to some extent. Political analysis is going to remain extremely difficult, and especially because you don't have a thing like a country in Africa. You have regions. Countries are interacting within each other in the spectrum of a region. What affects one country has impacts on the other ones. What's taking place in Somalia right now has huge impacts in Kenya and so forth. And this will continue. So you will never be able to handle a situation, look at a country and say, no, this is going to happen, because many things are going to come from outside. So prediction will be extraordinarily difficult to make, but at the same time, it will not prevent the continent from being on a very positive dynamics over the decade.
I see you